Hello, Kick-Ass Couples Nation. We are excited to be doing our first live KCN Nooner. We're going to do these every Tuesday at noon, give you some fun time to connect, learn more about how to prioritize your number one human relationship, and we are going to have some fun here every single Tuesday. I am Matthew P. Hoffman. I am your Chief Inspirational Officer for Kick-Ass Couples Nation. And we are going to talk today about how does faith play a role in marriage or your number one relationship. And so I just want to let you all know that we are going to be working on this pillar. We have 14 key pillars at Kick-Ass Couples Nation. And we're focusing on the one about faith and moral code and what that is. And we're going to really talk about faith for yourself, for your journey, how it's going to look like with your partner in your relationship. And the first key point that I want to talk about is how can you intentionally develop this pillar in your relationship? And we're going to talk about what your own faith or moral code looks like and developing it like the oxygen mask. You know, when you're on an airplane and they say that they want you to put your oxygen mask on first before you take care of anybody else. And that's really the way it is with faith and moral code is we want to make sure that you're taking care of your own faith journey and that your own moral code and that you're in great shape before you try to think about what you can do with your partner. So we're glad that you're joining us in. I see people coming in. Hey, Chris Cambus, Cole, love to see that everybody's joining us on our live stream today, our first KCN Nooner. So one of the things I want you to think about, what are your daily rituals? What daily rituals do you have to get you in that headspace, to get you in that place where you can have a strong faith and learn how to develop it further? And I can only speak from my own experience. And I want to make sure that you know how I start out my day. I start out my morning. It's kind of my spiritual meal, right? How am I going to feed myself and fortify myself and get myself ready to take on the day? And I do that with study. I have a Bible study that I work on. I'm thinking about how can I learn to show up better for not only my number one, my wife, my partner of almost 28 years, but everybody that I'm going to come into contact with, so that when I respond throughout the day, I'm responding based on my morals, on my values, and my faith, and how I want to show up for everybody and make sure I'm doing it the best way possible. And I do that through learning. I have a daily devotional that I look at. It's a short piece to spur my thought, to get me thinking about application and what I can do to make sure that my thought is where it needs to be and I'm focused on the things that are lasting. And one of the key points that you all need to remember about faith and moral code is that faith is not always something you can see. It's not tangible. It's not something that is going to be in front of you in the human circumstance, but it's trusting and having that faith, kind of like the divine power of the universe. Some people call it God, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, whatever your term for it might be, knowing that power is there and you can see evidence of it, even though you may not be able to grasp it or put your arms around it. A second thing I do after my study and my journal practice to work on my faith is I journal. I have a gratitude journal and I write down what are the 10 things that I would like to express gratitude for that day. What am I grateful for right now? And it gets me in that mindset of gratitude of the things I have, as opposed to thinking about the things that I don't have or what I'm lacking. So I write down those 10 things I'm grateful for, and then I work on who can I send love to that day? That may be thinking about them, it may be praying for them, and who can I send love to and pray for and lift up so that they too can be better equipped and feel supported in their journey at what they're doing right now. So, what you listen to, what you read has a huge impact in how you show up and how your faith develops. And I think that a lot of people think that they can listen to anything and see anything, but what you hear and listen with your senses is what you take in and what you start applying in your own experience. So, those are a few things, some of my daily rituals that I work on to get my headspace in the right way, to make sure that I am walking in my faith and that I am doing the things that are going to make sure that I am responding out of my principles and my values that I have set for myself. If you're joining us for the first time here on our KCN Nooner, we want you to know where you can find us. And we are on the social platforms that we are on. Instagram, if you're on Instagram Live right now, we are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. So if you want to find more about us, we have a lot of media out there for you to consume. Our goal is to help you learn how to prioritize your number one relationship and deepen and strengthen that partnership, that most important human relationship that's more important than all others. So if you want to find us, you can hit us on those 5 platforms. You can also come on over to MatthewPHoffman.com and learn more about Kick-Ass Couples Nation. We have a weekly blog. We have monthly webinars, bi-monthly webinars where we do a deep dive on our pillars. In fact, we have one coming up on faith and moral code this week, Thursday night at 5:30. If you want to learn more about that, look on the link in our Instagram and you can jump on and learn more about how you can deepen your relationship with your faith and moral code. And also, we're going to talk about how to eliminate fear. If fear is keeping you back, holding you back from your best self and your best ultimate relationship, we want you to come learn more about that. So I hope you'll join us, like us. If you like the content, let us know what you want to hear more of and more about. And we want to make sure we're being responsive to you. In those webinars that we have twice a month, we have a panel of licensed marriage therapists, and we answer your questions, and we want to make sure that you're being fed so that you can show up not just for yourself, but for that number one relationship that you have. Key point 2 that I want to talk to you all about today is what beliefs or platform do you and your partner subscribe to? Meaning, what have you developed together? What are you working on together? What platform of faith do you share that you're working on in that number one human relationship? And it doesn't have to be the same platform or the same faith background. Faith shows up as religion sometimes for people. My wife and I are both from the Christian faith. We have specific different denominations. So we're not identical in what we believe and what we practice. But what's great is that we are able to find what we have in common. And we've taken what we have in common and we work on it together, and we magnify that and represent that as a shared platform in our relationship. Having that shared platform of faith is critical, because if you want to show up for your number one human relationship, you've got to work on that platform. You've got to talk about it. If you haven't had the conversations, I encourage you to have the conversation and talk about what is important and what you're going to put out there and what you're going to claim as your relationship's faith, background, and walk. And like I said, they don't have to be the same. My wife and I certainly have differences in our platforms and what we do, but we're able to share what we have in common and magnify the good instead of focusing on what's separate. And we've had those conversations where we just have to agree to disagree because we're not the same and we see things differently. But I've learned how to grow and appreciate my spouse better because I understand where she's coming from and what her beliefs on, all the way to the standpoint that I feel I can successfully respond on her behalf if I had to, and know that I'm doing a good job about representing her and making sure that she understands me in the same way. So if you had to gauge your faith in the relationship with your partner, it's built over time. This is not something that happens in one day or one moment, but it's really your body of work that happens over a long period of time. And words are important, but your actions on what you're demonstrating, how you're showing your faith and stepping out, even though you don't see those things maybe apparent in your relationship right now, but having the faith to move forward and understand that you don't have to see it, that you can believe in it because of the impact that it has. Kind of the third point I love to talk about is, what's the overarching purpose of your relationship? Do you have a motto, goals, or objective? If you haven't talked to your partner or your spouse about what goals or objectives you have for them and in your own relationship, your faith walk together, it's really critical that you do that, because you want to make sure that you're actively working on it. In my own relationship with my partner with my wife of 28 years, my best friend, we've agreed upon that service above ourself is really a platform or a key tenet that we hang our relationship on. So we are thinking about others and how we can serve them. And that's how we choose to show up and develop our faith, by showing people what we believe and how we can express that unconditional love to them in service. How can we do that before we respond first to ourselves? And we also model that for our children, because we want our children to know and see the example of the strong faith that we have in our number one relationship. And, it's many acts that are sewn together over a long period of time that show, whether it's taking a meal to a widower in our neighborhood, whether it's showing up and serving in a soup kitchen, whether it's buying gifts and giving them anonymously to people, whether it's making a donation to an organization whose work we want to support. We also make sure that our faith and our moral code is, we know there's a higher power, something outside of ourselves, our own wants, our own needs, that's important. And we want to make sure that we recognize that the goodness, yes, we've got to do the work. There's an old African proverb I love. It says, as you pray, move your feet. It is not about just praying and doing things in silence in your own closet and being quiet, but it's about praying and asking for that direction or that guidance from that higher and that divine power. And then it is showing up and making sure that you're doing the work, that you're moving your feet so that you can show that your actions are demonstrating your faith and your belief. So that's something you want to make sure you're doing. If you have that recognition of a higher power, that's going to develop your faith and your wants and needs. And how would you tell your partner's faith and moral code story if you could? And could you tell that story for your partner? Do you know their faith journey and how to develop it, and what you would say to share their story with somebody else well enough? Then that means you're aware and you're in touch with that person who means more to you, and you have that common platform that you can work from. So how do we tie that together? So I want to let you know that my own faith journey with my bride, Kim, that we do it together and we do it separately. We each have our own time where we connect to that higher power and we work on developing our own faith story. And then we come together. We do that sometimes through worship, through praying together. We will pray together and work on our family or each other, or pray for our children. We attend services together. I go to the church that my wife likes to go to, and then my wife will come to the service that I like to go to as well. And it's not about me saying that I've got to accept and believe everything she believes, but we're doing it together and we're doing it separately. And it's important to us that our children also are raised in a home of strong faith. We want them to know that no matter what, that they can work on their faith, that their faith is with them, the relationship to that divine power. Even though mom and dad may not be there, they can choose to rely on that power, that relationship with their heavenly father, that divine experience, even when mom and dad aren't there. And that's something that they have to learn. It has to be modeled for them, and they have to develop that over time. A great example of how my wife and I share our faith story together is we both listen to a lot of podcasts. And one of the ones that we both enjoy listening to is the Tony Evans podcast. And he is somebody who I believe tells it like it is. He has an amazing knowledge of the Bible. And for me, he really makes it come alive with how he explains and shares in common language. It's not stuff you can't understand. It's not up in the stratosphere, but he relates to me and makes those scriptures come alive, so I get a better idea of how I can apply them in my own experience. So, what podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading? What steps are you taking to edify yourself and your faith walk so that you're getting stronger and learning outside of? When we first got married, my wife used to look at my bookshelf because it's full of self-help books. And she would say, haven't you figured it out yet? Haven't you learned that it really is not coming from all those other people, but you can feel confident in your own knowledge. And then she began to understand that I'm thirsty and always looking, and I have a strong desire to learn everything I can. And I pick little crumbs and little pieces from everybody I read, from every podcast I listen to, or most conversations that I have. I'm always taking notes, and those become part of my collective, my own faith walk, my own development. So she and I both listened to that podcast, and I heard that Tony Evans had a study Bible. He had a version of the Bible, and he had his study notes on it. And I bought that gift for my wife. It's one of the gifts I gave her at Christmas, was a Tony Evans study Bible, because I know it's important for her to read and study the word, and that she likes what he has to say in his interpretation. So that was a step I took to support her walk and her faith and give her that gift. And that's just one small thing that I did to have a common connection point in our faith walk. And in your number one human relationship, if you're married or if you're in a committed relationship, the things that you can do are figure out what are those common points of connection, those common bonds, and how can you invest in it and develop your own individual walk. And then collectively, what can you do to develop your faith and moral code as a couple? Because people that pray together, you've heard, stay together. And if you are taking those steps to edify that one important pillar of faith, not just your own, but your faith walk with your spouse, you can set goals. What goals do you have in 2023 for your faith and moral code? How do you want to get stronger in your faith? How can that help strengthen and edify your number one human relationship? So, what we want to know is that Kick Ass Couples Nation is here to support your walk. We want to help you. We've got content coming out across all of our social media platforms, in our blog. Kimberly and I celebrated, we're a year and a half in. We're coming up on episode 85 and 90, almost 100 episodes on the Kick-Ass Couples podcast. And in that podcast, we interview couples at all life stages, people who aren't married yet, people who've been married for 10 years, 15 years. We even married a couple that was together for 62 years. And man, they are doing it right. And you can listen to the podcast. You can read the blog, look at all the resources. Every week, Kimberly and I post TGWM. Thank God we're married. And we share what's the one thing that you can do right now to have impact in your number one human relationship. The one thing we want to tell you to do right now is, how can you develop your faith? How can you get stronger individually and collectively? If you tap in, if you need help to do that, you're not sure what steps you can take, come on over to Kick-Ass Couples Nation. Check out some of the posts we have in our social media. Read our blog at MatthewPHoffman.com, or attend one of our bi-monthly webinars. KCN is going to be coming up with KCN Coaching later this month, where you can have private sessions with me as your relationship coach. You can talk to a certified marriage therapist and get coaching on all the things you can do right now to go to the next level and reach that relationship nirvana in your number one human relationship. We hope that you'll come out. If you have any questions right now, go ahead and type them in the chat, either on Instagram, in Facebook, or LinkedIn, or YouTube. I'm available. I want to answer your questions, and we are going to be here every week at Tuesday at noon. You can tune in live to a KCN Nooner, where I'm going to have guests. I'm going to have other marriage therapists. I'm going to try to get Chris Cambus, my co-author on my first book, Kick-Ass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. And we'll go through a chapter and share a key point, and you will be able to talk to us and ask those questions. And we're going to work hard to keep investing, keep giving you resources and tools as to how you can level up your number one human relationship. So in summary, we talked about faith today. How can you improve your own faith as an individual? How can you do it intentionally and develop this key pillar with your spouse? What faith and moral code have you developed? What are you putting out there? What are the values and the principles and the beliefs and a power outside yourself that you're working on to develop in your own number one human relationship. We appreciate you coming out today and being with us. We're going to be going live every Tuesday. You'll see us pop up. We want to engage with you. You want to give you more food, more sustenance, and more ideas. Check us out at Kick-Ass Couples Nation on any of our 5 social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We can't wait to have you join us. Come on to one of our webinars this Thursday at 5:30 for 1 hour if you want to learn about how to increase the faith in your relationship, and if you want us to teach you the easy process to eliminate fear. If you want to overcome the things that you're fearful of or that are holding you back, we're going to give you some easy strategies on how you can do that this Thursday, 5:30 p.m. kickasscouplesnation.com. Check our Instagram post. You will see the link to join that webinar. And we hope you remember that happily ever after does not just happen, it's on purpose. We're here for you, and we'll see you out there. Thanks for joining us.